Grand Rise, everybody. Happy Tuesday, May the 19th. This is the Movement Project virtual class, free class. Give it a minute so that people at home tuning in, please again make sure you give a thumbs up, click like if you're here, if you're enjoying it. Put a comment below and let me know that you have arrived. One of the things we're going to be working on today, well, our focus is going to be, again, not only on feet, but a little bit on hips. You're going to need a strap, so like a yoga strap or a belt works really nice. Of course, if you do happen to have a resistance band, then that would work as well too. I have a weight plate here, but you can certainly use a thick book at home, something that's going to elevate your heel. And yeah, then the wall. And again, if you don't really have a free space or open space on the wall, then a non-moving object, just something that if you put some of your weight into, that it's not going to knock over or get tipped over. So a box, a pretty heavy box, something like that will work really well. Again, just if you're tuning in, click like, put some comments below, let me know that you're here. Good morning, Grand Rise. We're going to be working on our feet today as well as our hips, but those two things are interrelated and interconnected, so they kind of go hand in hand. Perhaps many of you have been out there actually exercising more, whether you're out on your bike or rollerblading or running or hiking, whatever that is. A lot of this can really help when you're starting to increase your activity level. Of course, if you've also been sitting for work more at your computer because you now have been working from home, this will probably make your hips feel good as well too. So we'll go ahead and get started. You can start in a seated position down on the ground, whatever is comfortable for you. We're just going to try to work on a little bit of toe mobility. I'm going to take my left hand, it's my right foot, left hand, and I'm going to take my fingers and interlace my fingers in between all the toes. Okay? And so this is just going to create space between all the toes. And then I'm going to hold on to my leg, and I'm going to work on creating some circles, not only at the ankle, but I want to make sure that the toes are flexing and bending as well, too. We're going to go the other direction. Then I'm going to hold the ankles steady. So I'm going to actually flex back this direction, and then I'm going to cup on with my hand to hold it steady. And then we're going to focus on the forefoot. So that is just mostly where the middle of the arch is, towards the top where the ball of foot is. So trying to keep your fingers interlaced between all your toes, lock in that ankle, and then we're going to work just on that midfoot. So I'm going to take my fingers out so you can see this a little bit better. You're trying to work on flexing or extending and pulling back, and then also trying to round the top of the foot and come down. So I want you to focus on just being able to move through that upper portion. Okay? And then again, we'll repeat the same thing on the other side. So, I'm telling the camera, but you can do whichever side. You just want to, it's easier to take your opposite arm to your opposite leg. So interlace all your fingers, again, between your toes. I'm going to wrap my arm underneath here just so I can hold on to my leg. I'm going to make somewhat of these clockwise, circular movements. In fact, the slower I go, the better. So reverse. Then I'm going to hold on to the ankle, lock it in what's called dorsiflexion. Okay, so it makes a 90 degrees, so hold it steady, and then just work again on that first part of the foot, the forefoot, from the arch on up to the toes. Your foot can actually twist here, evert and invert, and again, those toes should be able to move back and forward or flex and extend just like your spine. Okay, now we're going to come up standing. So I'm going to bring the camera in here a little bit. It's going to be easier to see probably what's happening at my feet versus... This is where you want to use your thick book, small box, maybe even the corner of a coffee table, low table. What we're looking for is to be able to... That's on Wednesday. You guys agreed on Wednesday at 8. Hey, it's a live class. It's all good. I'm just... So you want to... Yeah, especially if you're gonna do some weightlifting, you want to be able to connect in through the ground, right? We talk about ground force reaction, so these are actually really great for the days that you're going to be doing some of your lower body lifts, deadlifts, squats, loaded lunges, what have you. Okay, or even if your guys are, again, if you're doing cardio, if you're getting out, if you're running, jogging, increasing your locomotion, using speed, this is all going to help with that. So with the block or the object that you have, I'm looking to get a little bit of a toe support. Okay, so my big toe, and I'll show it with the left foot so you can kind of see. What I want to do is make sure that the ball of foot stays intact with the ground. Sometimes people will get their toe up and then the whole part of this foot will kind of lift off the ground and won't even be touching down. So just that first metatarsal is being supported. If you have a flat object, hopefully your foretoes can hang off to the side. You might feel a little bit of a stretch into the arch in the plantar fascia. That's a good thing. You might feel a little stretch just in that toe. What I want to do is keep my weight centered on my foot. I want to start applying pressure forward as well as down. I want to think about pressing through that ball of foot and then again planting my big toe, great toe, all the way flush into the ground. So sometimes we'll say, imagine that you're grabbing the ground. That's an isometric tensioning. So you're just starting to create a little bit of rigidity in that area of the foot, the plantar fascia, and in the arch. And then what we're going to do is do the exact opposite. So we're going to alleviate pressure on the object, and we're going to imagine that you're pulling the toenail back towards the shin. And you'll know that you're doing a good job, that you're creating that isometric tension, that little rigidity in the tissues, and you'll see the tendons start to come through the top of the foot. That's a good sign that you're starting to create tension up towards the front of the ankle, up towards the front of the knee and the shin area on the top of the foot. We'll do it one more time. We're going to press forward and down into the surface. So now we're creating tension on the back side of the foot, behind, up the Achilles and into the calf. 10 to 15 seconds. 15 seconds is good. And then we're going to pull back, creating tension on the top or anterior chain to the front. And then we're going to come off that for just a moment. Now we're going to test our results here to see if we got more neural connection or neural drive into the foot. So I'm going to practice keeping my big toe down. So here's where I was pressing forward into the object and allowing all fours to lift up, to separate, or what's called disassociation. Then I'm going to lift the big toe. Come on, Paigey. Yep. And then keep all four spread down and long. So again, we call that separation. So do it, little toes down, big toes down. You can think of your foot like your hand. I'm trying to create a little bit of disassociation or connection to the thumb, separate of all four fingers, right? So that ability to grab and use my hand is very similar to the foot. So let's do this on the other side. Little bit of support. So as I flip over, we'll do this on the other side, on my right, on my particular right. But again, it doesn't matter which one you start off with at home. Little bit of a stretch up the object. So whatever you're using, you want to feel, I mean, maybe. You might not feel a super intense stretch because you just may not be bound up or tight or what's called a concentric orientation of these tissues. That's okay, but I'm just saying what you want to know or understand is that you're lengthening here. And then what we're going to attempt to do, so again, this is not an intense stretch for me, so I'm going to go ahead and start with creating neural connection and tension to that joint. I'm going to press down into the ground through the ball of foot and lay my toe back into the floor. So I'm having to push in my object. You can usually tell that you're doing a good job because the tip of your toe might even go a little bit white, or you'll start seeing some change in color and orientation there. We're going to do the opposite. We're going to try to contract the top part of the foot, work on the anterior chain. So we're going to pull back, and you can see the tendon coming through. You might even, like I said, feel that irradiate up the shin bone. Anterior tibialis should be somewhat active. And then we're going to do it one more time. So we're going to apply pressure forward. Pushing into the ground, pushing into the earth, pushing down through the floor. And then we're going to apply pressure in the reverse, or again, creating this rigidity or this tensioning like a bow and arrow. And then release. So now what I'm going to do, quick test, right? Just test yourself. This is just a good indication of how much neuromuscular control, how well does your brain actually know or understand where your body's at in space. Keeping the 4 toes down, you lift the big one. You're creating separation or disassociation between the big toe and the 4 little ones so that you have more of an ability to connect into the surface of the ground or whatever it is that you're walking or jumping or running or doing things on. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is use that same book or object to support my heels. So it's what's called heels elevated, or it might look like you have a tiny high heel on. One thing you want to think about, if I can show you the bottom of my foot, is I just want to make sure that my heel is the only thing that's being supported. So you can see where my footprint would be if I had stepped in water and was walking on the ground. I want to make sure that the edge of that book or block or whatever you're using comes to here. What I don't want is the edge to go driving into the middle of your arch of your foot. So try to remember to only have it as a heel support, okay? Kind of turn this way a little bit. There we go. Okay, so I'm about shoulder distance or hip distance apart in terms of where my feet are at, okay? What I want to do is think about pulling all 5 toes back, and then I want to splay my whole forefoot back into the ground. And then from here, what I'm going to do is practice raising my heels just ever so slightly off the object. So all I did was went from having pressure into my heels and my forefoot, and then I'm going to take pressure out of my heels and just barely hover over the object. Immediately, you're already going to be working on some balance or control here because you're only on the balls of your feet for the most part. So if you need to hold on to a chair or something in front of you so you don't fall over, that's fine. So again, I'll turn to the side so you can see me as best as you can. Only my heels supported. Spread, splay, left to right pressure. Toes are long. Press through the ground and try to hold yourself using your calves, using that Achilles, using the backs of your legs to really tension. You might even feel your glutes engaged. It's not a bad thing. It's called triple extension. Okay, and then recover. So we're going to go back. So now we're going to lift the heels one more time. So press through the balls of the feet. You can go higher than you were before, come back down, come up a little higher. So now you're performing a full-on calf raise, if you've ever done calf raises. I just want to spread long. It's not a big movement. This object I'm using, look at that, it's about 2 inches high already. 3. Make sure you have equal pressure. Make sure you feel equal pressure from left and right foot. 2. And 1. Whew. Okay, so now it makes sense. What we're going to do is now just start to jump, right? So I'll bring the camera back up here. So we prepared the foot to create some connection to the ground. We got a little bit more neural connection back to our brain. So now this is where we have to perform a little bit of cardiovascular movement in order to get some blood flow pumping before we get into the hips. So hopefully it's accessible for you. I call this just fake jump roping, like just 2 foot, 2 hops in place, okay? If you do have some space at home, you're a little antsy, move around a little bit, that's fine. You can maybe jog. Then we're going to do jumping jacks, and then we're going to go open, close, right? Whatever you want to do with your hands. I would encourage you to try to keep your lips sealed. Try to breathe through your nose. I'm not, because I'm talking. Then we're going to do a little march or a high knee in place. Then I'm going to imagine there's a line on the ground. I'm going to take that 2 foot, 2 hop jump, forward and back, forward and back. That same imaginary line, 2 feet, 2 hop, left to right. Split stance, or what might even, if you know it as a plyo split squat. So I'm going to take myself off of a bilateral position, stagger 1 foot back, jump switch, jump switch. Good. So, driving a lot of blood flow, not only into the feet, now you're going to get more blood circulating throughout your body. Getting yourself a little bit sweaty, maybe breathing a little heavy. Totally normal to start feeling your calves working, maybe your shins, your ankles starting to burn after doing all that dynamic movement. So, here's now where we bring it back to the hips. One of my favorite positions, the Shin Box Position. Some of you are probably familiar with the 90-90. Very similar, not quite full 90 degrees. In fact, it's less than that. For many people, it's a lot easier to get into that position. So if you're following along at home, I've got my left leg in front. One thing, just think, if I'm sitting Indian style, what I'm going to do is take this top leg, flip it, and turn it to the back. So I'll call that the trail leg, right? Lead leg in the front. I'm starting off with my left side. Okay. Place your left hand down outside your left hip so you're leaning over to the left just a little bit. We're going to play with this back hip here. So I'm going to let this back hip drop back and away, and then I'm going to pull this back hip forward and in. Back and open, forward and in. Back and open, forward and in. One more, back and open, forward and in. Okay? Then I'm going to play with coming all the way down towards a forearm, letting this hip and leg roll forward and roll back this way. So I'm sliding this right hip up towards the top of my left hip, and then I'm sliding it down far and away. So that looks like my knee plants, my inner thigh plants. And then I come down, I come all the way down to my forearm, and then that knee can lift off the ground. It's totally fine. Okay? Now we're going to stay static. So keep that left hand planted. Allow yourself to lean over to the left just a little bit. I want to create now an isometric tensioning again. So I want to think about pressing down through the ankle, through the knee. I want to think about pressing down through this knee and this ankle. So both the lead leg and the trail leg. If I came over and tried to rip your leg from the ground, you shouldn't let me do that. So that's that tension or that force back into the ground to connect through that surface. We're going to work on thoracic rotation. So opening and then reaching through. So what you don't want is your hips moving. Now I'm creating separation through that upper body and creating rotation through the T-spine while the hips actually remain static. So no hip movement. Think about inhaling to open, exhaling as you reach through. Okay? So now we're going to get a little bit dynamic with our our trail leg. And so what that means is we're actually going to be testing the stability of that front leg. So in this case, the left. Okay? If you're a beginner just trying this out, you're going to want to leave your hand on the ground. That extra tensioning into the floor, that extra stabilization is going to help you create tension and static movement here. We're going to work on getting dynamic with the trail leg, like I said. So it looks like this. If I'm a beginner, pick it up, sweep it to the front, and it goes long. Okay, so the knee extends, and you can even think about pointing the foot. And then I'm going to pick it up. I'm pressing down through that front leg, bend it, and then bring it back to where I had it before. If I'm advanced, if I want to give it a shot, I can take this hand off the ground. Notice how I'm going to keep the integrity of my spine. Swing, kick forward, and swing, kick back. Okay, and again, I'm talking through this and trying to do the movement, but hopefully you get the idea that what I don't want to do is start creating a bowing or an arching if I decide to take my hand off the ground. That would not be keeping the integrity of my rib cage and my pelvis stacked and in alignment. So we've talked about the last several videos, keeping our canister and the integrity of that stacking. There's no difference here, okay? Switch it out. We're going to do it on the other side. So right leg is in front. Flex the ankle here a little bit. Left leg is to the back. The first thing we're doing is working on dropping that hip back, kind of opening it up almost, and then rocking and rolling it forward and in. Back and forward. So these dynamic movements like this, again, are supposed to kind of help us with some sensory motor input, trying to get a little bit better understanding. Sometimes people don't know that their body can move in these ways, or sometimes you can be using it as a gauge. Well, how tight do I feel today versus yesterday, or what have you, right? So sometimes it just lets you know where you're at on the spectrum. Okay, the second maneuver, so again, the hip can rotate forward in and backwards and open, and then the hips can also create a seesaw from up and down, so to speak. So I'm coming down to the forearm, pressing down through that front knee and ankle, and that knee will come up off the ground. That hip will slide up and in, and then I can push away, and then that hip is going to slide down and long and away, okay? Up, in line with the other hip, or maybe even higher, and then that hip slides down and away, okay? And I'm using coming to the forearm as an easier way to figure that out. Good. Just again as maybe an example, my hips can open and close, and they can also go up and they can go down, which we're going to get a little bit to that later here with some of our hip stuff. So if I come back up to my hand, remember the beginner level for this side, keeping the integrity of the hand into the ground, lock that out. Make sure you get your rib cage stacked over the pelvis. We're pressing down through that front leg, knee and ankle. I'm going to lift up the knee in the back, then take the ankle off the ground, then sweep the leg, kick it forward. You can even try pointing. Turn it, rotate it, kick it back, and allow it to plant back on the ground. Whoops, I started to cheat there because I was bending through this elbow. Let's see if I can do that one again. So I have a little bit more trouble on my right versus my left. So I'm going to stick with the beginner version. Trying to make sure I've got core stabilization, making sure this knee can't get lifted from the ground. I can test myself. Remember I said, don't let me rip it from the floor. Point and come back. And again, I'm not going to be as good on this side with taking my hand off the ground, But that's the idea, is that I can disassociate that hip appropriately and be able to mobilize it while I'm creating static tension on the other parts of my body. Okay? So let's bring ourselves back up. So this is where having the wall or the non-moving object is going to come into play here. Put these over here. So the first thing I'm going to do is we'll start with our right leg out in front of us. So we're going to adopt, you can think of it as a lunge stance. And again, I'm just trying to get a close-up here of my feet. Think about having if I stood on 2 feet about hip distance apart, I'm going to keep that distance, 2 fist distance helps, slide that foot straight back, and then I'm going to turn it out at a 45-degree angle. And I'm using my wall or my non-moving object to press the back of my heel into, okay? So we want the knee relatively straight. And if you watch my ankle, I don't want the foot to collapse into the ground. I don't want the pinky toes to come off the floor. I actually want to push down through the pinky toes and actually create an arch, that slight bowing, and press through that heel. So this is a big no-no. We don't want it to drop in and roll. We want to be able to use the wall as leverage to remind ourselves to press through the outer edge of the pinky side of that left rear foot, press through the heel, knees should be straight. And that, if I palpate, if I just place my hand on my derriere, on my buttocks, that should feel nice and rigid and stiff. So now we're getting a nice lengthening or opening up through the front of this hip flexor. I want to think about keeping the front knee in line with the ankle and not going so high up in the air with my hips, but allowing myself to lower down towards the ground. So we're just going to get a little bit dynamic with the front. Pull the knee back to straighten, and then allow yourself to sink. So you're working on keeping that rear foot static, rear leg static, and we're just getting a little dynamic with this knee. My knee can come forward as much as I want, so long as my heel doesn't come off the ground. And then I want to pull back and feel like there's even more weight in the heel, and I'm pressing those toes long and away. Pull down, drive tension still through the heel and the forefoot, so that ball of foot comes back into play, and then pull back. Okay? Now what we're going to do is I'm going to allow my back foot, the heel, to come off the ground, pivot. So now I'm going to orientate everything towards the front. So both feet are pointed forward out in front of me, and the only thing now resting on the wall or that non-moving object is going to be my heel. So my ball of foot is still supported on the ground. Now what we're going to do is try to keep the front leg static and work on allowing that rear leg, that knee, to drop. Okay? Now the lower the knee gets to the ground, the more the heel is going to come away from the wall, so the heel will stack in line with the ball of foot. And then as I come up, I can use the wall just a little bit as leverage so I don't actually fall backwards. So as I come forward and drop down, I want to get the heel to come over the ball of the foot. I want to keep the knee tracking underneath the hip. We're going to do 2 more. Use the calf, use that Achilles in the back, using your glute again here to help keep that hip flexor lengthened and opened up from all that sitting. Good. So let's switch that out on the other side. I'll walk through that same sequence with you. Let me move this up a little bit because we're going to start incorporating strap and belt. So remember, we started off, if I'm facing forward, I'm about 2 fist distance apart, about shoulder distance apart. I'm about 1 leg length roughly away from the wall. That foot, that leg comes back, so that heel is still where it would have been, and then it's out at about a 45-degree angle. So my right knee actually hyperextends. It tends to be, what people would even call like a hypermobile. It's been like that for years and years. So it's hard not to want to use your trainer or the coach as an example, and I'm always doing my best to demonstrate the most effective and efficient position, but I also have my imperfections and things that I'm working on, so I just want to take note. Because this, for me, is the hard one. What happens is if I lock my knee back, so I'll still might tend to collapse into the arch. Remember we talked about that on the other side. Don't let your foot roll and rock in. Press through the outside of your foot, press through your pinky edge, and try to use the wall as a reference point to be able to do that. Okay, I think I got it. I can tell, for me, it's, I've been doing this for so long, I can tell, I'm searching for a feeling. So a lot of times I don't even have to look at what I'm doing. I can just search for that feeling. Sometimes. Sometimes. Okay? So just practicing getting into that position. And again, we're going to work on the front leg here. Okay? Remember, the important thing is that I can allow my knee to track forward in line with the 2 middle toes, but if my heel starts to come off the ground, that is likely when most people will start to experience quite a bit of pressure in the kneecap itself. That doesn't mean that I can't do this, but again, if I lose that contact, sometimes I'm going to lose the strength and stability from the backside of that leg, and that is what can cause discomfort. Okay, and I'm not looking to cause discomfort. I'm actually looking to improve the resiliency of your tissues. So we're shifting forward, we're shifting back. This leg, the rear leg, the trail leg is static, non-moving. I'm just trying to leverage this front knee, this front hip, that foot. So press through the ball of foot, but keep the heel down. And then really press through the heel as you come back, okay? Now we're going to pivot and let the heel rest so that the ball of foot is on the ground, okay? It's a little bit of heel support at the top. Now, I'm on, my left leg is my forward leg, or the lead leg, So I want to make sure I don't keep too much weight to the back. I mean, you could work on this move. It's actually a very good one to work on. But my goal for this is to have you pull your heel off the wall so it becomes in line with the ball of foot, so it makes a vertical line. Then I lower down, keeping my knee tracking underneath the hip. So as I come back to the starting point, I can use the wall, but I'm using the wall as reference to shift my weight forward into the left, keep the heel over the ball of foot, press through that ball of foot, and now here I've got this perfect 90-90 in that bottom position. Pull the tailbone, keep pulling the tailbone underneath. Scoop, scoop. Okay, that's the action of the glutes as well as the front transverse abdominis, some of that core. So just one more here, and it can help you taking your breath out. Small breath in. Maybe you punch yourself in the guts a little bit just to make sure you've got some tension in the front abs, and then reset. Very good. This is where now we're going to incorporate the strap, and we're going to incorporate the T-spine. So we can still create healthy, resilient hips by understanding the connections of the chains in the body. This also really speaks to a lot of my golfers, a lot of my rotational athletes out there. Being able to actually tension the hips and then create separation through the upper body is actually what can help you create power, be more efficient, power production, et cetera, et cetera. So I have a strap. You can use a belt if you have a resistance band. Hell, if you have like a hand towel, the goal is just to be able to hold on to something that is a little bit wider than your shoulder distance. So if you look at the camera, this is about like exactly in line with the shoulder, a very square position. I'm looking to go a little bit outside of that. One of the things I tell people is the carrying angle. If you have your hands down by your side, you see the distance between the elbow and the wrist creates this triangular space. That's exactly where I want my grab. So it's much like the Y from the YMCA, so to speak. So it's a little bit wide, just a little bit, okay? Create some tension, create a good grip. Make sure that you're not bending back on the wrist like you're trying to start your motorcycle. We're going to keep the wrist neutral. Good morning, Colleen. You're going to keep the wrist neutral, okay? We're going to use the wall again, you guys, or the non-moving object. Super important here. What I'm going to do is think about my foot here is about one leg length away from the wall, and just for quick purposes today, I'll show you a tip on how to figure that out another day, but today we'll get after it. My foot is going to go up on the wall. Now I've got this baseboard here, so one thing to think about, if you have that yoga block or something, your foot doesn't need to be more than that high from the ground. I do not want the tippy toes like a ballerina touching the floor. I literally want the whole foot on the wall, but also understand the higher I go, no bueno. So if I stay a little bit low, I would call that about 4 inches from the actual ground where the wall meets the ground. I'm going to push into the wall. Okay, whoo! Already, I've got a lot of balance that I'm working on here. I want to still try to find that rigidity and the pulling of my back pockets down. So now I've got my wide grip. I'm going to come down and sink into this. I got pressure in the heel, big toe, pinky toe, same thing on the back foot. Really strong into the wall. Take a breath in and out. And as I exhale, I'm going to rotate towards the lead side. So I am rotating towards my left leg because that's the leg that's in front. Okay, I just got to take a quick break. Let me get set up again. It's fair to say that if you're performing this correct, we have a joke and movement project. If it's not really freaking hard, there's a good chance you could be doing it wrong. And I don't want to say wrong. It could just mean that there's some leakage of energy in the system. And if you just keep watching, I'm just going through rotation, coming back to my start, exhaling through my rotation, inhale to come back. That should burn a little bit. And the reason why my heart rate is going up is because of how much muscle tissue is in usage. It's like how I explain to people, all the lights on the Christmas tree are on right now, not just a few of them. So this is a fully integrated movement, and we're working with the sling systems. And so from that toe, from my big toe, all the way through my fingertips and through the crown of the head is what's working. So we'll flip it, do it on the other side. So for the second round, right leg is in front, left foot on the wall or the non-moving object. Pull the butt cheek. So if you had pockets like on your jean pants, pull it down to scoop the tailbone underneath and to stay loaded into the hips. Okay? Create tension on your strap, on your belt, whatever you got. Exhale through your rotation to the right. Feel how much tension you have through that midsection as you do it. Inhale will come back. Exhale, move through. Pull and punch. Punch and pull. Good signs that you're doing it well, you're having some sense of efficiency. People will tend to feel that stretch or that preloading phase on the outside of that right hip. You might start to feel your left hamstring or even some of your adductors, so your inner thighs working. The more I go through that rotation, the more I have some of that internal rotation that's necessary on the hip. So those are things that you're definitely going to want to feel as you get more practice doing this. So remember, you can play this video back again. It doesn't hurt to do this stuff a minimum of once a week, maybe even twice a week, depending on what your goals are. But that's a nice thing about these live videos. So that was just a brief little window into some wall drills with the hip. what's called closed chain. We're going to finish out here strong, as they say, with doing some kind of open chain hip mobility, okay? And again, your foot is very much involved here. So let's see here, what is the best angle. Okay, come back just a little bit. See if I can practice this. Well, I'll try this view, and then we'll see maybe if I get probably more of a diagonal view, actually. Okay, so let's start off with something like super basic. So I think it'll work really well to go into this. What I want to do is, if I'm standing on 2 feet, act like a tree, wave left, wave right, kind of sway, excuse me. What I want to do is shift my weight over to my left leg. So I've now swayed left, I'm in my left foot, and I'm going to pick up my right leg. So I'm going to go into what's called hip flexion, some knee flexion, and I'm actually going to dorsiflex my ankle. So I'm going to pull my toenails back towards the shin. Single leg balance position. We're going to work on kicking the leg back, hinging forward in order to do so. If you've done this, it's a single leg RDL or a single leg hinge. I can come back to my start, and then I'm going to kick back. If I reach my arms forward, if I want to keep holding on to the strap, that can actually help. In fact, I would encourage you, if you have trouble with your balance, this tensioning upstairs in the hands and the T-spine will help you perform this movement. Okay? So when I'm here, I'm locked on that left side. So knee locked, hip lock. As I go to hinge and kick back, I unhinge and unlock both at the knee and the hip so that I can load and then reset for a second. Okay, so if you notice, I kind of lowered my center of mass down just a tiny bit. So think about how we had our foot turned out when the heel was on the wall a moment ago. I'm going to come back. I'm going to create that tension in the strap. I'm going to get back into that big old hinge position, and what I'm going to do is work on rotating my back leg so my toes point out to the side, almost all the way up to the ceiling, to open the hip, and then watch. We're going to do just like we did with our shin box. Turn it in, and in. I'm trying to create rotation of this hip, spinning it internally and externally while staying static, steady, and loaded on the left. So again, I'm just going to try to, as a coach, as a trainer, you always try to exaggerate the movement so the person has a little bit better understanding. But I don't think that everyone would have this particular range of motion or the capacity to get through these ranges. So always going to be better to move slow through this process as much as you can and controlled, because it really doesn't do you any good to be here and like flailing about. Let's try it on the other side, okay? A little less cueing, a little bit more demo. I'll show you what it looks like. Tension. Weight shift to the right. We're going to start from a knee drive, single leg position, kick back. Pull through. Kick back. Tension, tension, tension. Through the hands. Rip that belt, rip that strap apart, left to right. Pull, pull, pull. This is my bad foot. One more. And then again, we're going to work on spiraling and rotating the left hip while staying loaded, static, and stable on the right. Again, this is for all my golfers. Disassociation, some separation of the hips here, under load or in a closed chain for that right foot. So kick back. You can roll the hip open as if you're going to stack two hips on top of each other. You're going to roll it back. It's going to sink down. It's going to come in, open. Back. Paigey. Okay, again, that's my not so great ankle, my right foot. Whew. Those of you who are familiar with hip CARS, CARS stands for Controlled Articulate Rotations. If you've ever taken a class of ours here in person when we're open, or if you've ever had one of the privilege to work with one of our instructors, this is not too different from doing this particular movement per se, how we're trying to articulate the joint in the hip socket. We're just going at it from a different mechanism, which includes a loaded foot on the other side. The all fours position might be a better entry point for a beginner, especially when they're just trying to create motor control and awareness, neural connection to the brain and body. And then the one that we did just now might be more for some of our advanced people, or that have had much practice. So just keep in mind, as I've said throughout the last several weeks, that we really are trying to help our athletes and clients create a connection back to their body, to have a better understanding of where they are in space, right? To understand how to connect through the ground. Sensory motor input precedes power production. So if I don't kind of have an understanding of where I'm at in time and space, I'm going to probably have an inefficient power production mechanism. And maybe when I'm young, 19, 20, 21, I can get away with these things. But, you know, we work with a pretty large population of individuals that are at that golden stage, and some of their inefficiencies, maybe people call them dysfunctions or whatever you want, however you want to label it, starts to catch up with them. And that's what leads to that pain. That's what leads to then, think about it like this. I just had a client. He's in pain and he can't sleep well. He can't sleep well, and so now he's in more pain. And it's starting to create this really kind of terrible cyclical sort of thing happen, right? So I think, again, one of our big goals here at Premier Fitness is to help our clients. We want you guys to move better. We want you to feel good. We want to see you excel and perform at your best. That's really, most of us trainers have that much passion, and we love our job so much that we're willing to study and educate ourselves as much as we can in order to help you guys move. So keep in mind, like I said, you can share this video with your friends. If you have young kids at home, maybe high school athletes that are doing track, basketball, soccer even, those sports that require them to be on their feet and moving around, working on agility, this video is perfect for that, for feet and hips, you guys, to work on that neural connection. So again, make sure you click like, share it with your friends, put some comments below if you liked it. And as we wind down to the next couple of weeks, I'll be asking you guys if there's anything in particular you want to work on. I'm trying to keep these videos simple so that it doesn't require a lot of equipment, being that I'm sure most of you are doing this at home and not in another gym of sorts. And lastly, we offer online coaching. We have the capacity to not only do live FaceTime one-on-one sessions. If you need a second pair of eyes to make sure everything is uniform and efficient and you're doing your movement patterns well, reach out to us. Send us a direct message here. Call us at the gym. Send an email. Go visit our www. If you live far away and you're kind of an expert and you want a program, say a 4 to 6 week program, and then have your phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and actually do 3 months, 4 months, 6 months of training with us virtually, we've got our application. It's got wonderful videos showing you visually how to do the exercise. It's got all the cueing, just like I did today, telling you where to think about pressurization through your foot, heel, buttocks, pull the glutes underneath you, all those things. So just keep that in mind, you guys. We're still operating at less than 100% capacity. If you would like to donate, if you like what we're offering, I will put, again, my Venmo in the comments below. This is all a pro bono free class just to help you guys out there have a little sanity and feel better. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next week.